Hey, and welcome back to part 2 of making your first 3D game in Unity. I'm Ryan, and hopefully you checked out part 1. I don't know why you want it, on how to make your terrain. So you should have your terrain all set up, all nice, got some mountains, got some grass, stuff like that. Now we have to actually get with making the game, and we're going to start with making the player and making the player walk around. So to begin, we actually have to make an object for our player to basically be. So what I like to do is let's go to Scene tab, and then I'm going to make another 3D object. This time I'm going to make a capsule. I like to make my objects be capsules, or my players be capsules, just because they're super nice like that. So I'm going to go ahead and just drop him in the grass field right there, and then you can see in the Game tab he's down there. So actually, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to scale my guy up to 3, 3, and 3, just because I like to be a bit bigger. Alright, so there we go. And then I can rename the capsule to be player, just so we're a bit more organized and we know what everything is, so we don't have a bunch of boxes and capsules everywhere. So, to begin, in the inspector, you can see that we already have a couple of components. It already gives us a collider, it already gives us a mesh renderer so we can see it. But we need to add one important thing to begin with. So we need to add a character controller. Now what this does, it allows the player to basically move around the world. So you don't have to worry about any of these inputs because we're not going to have any slopes. We're not going to have any changing of sizes or anything. So this will work just fine. And then we need to actually add a script. So if you have all of my stuff from the Unity package, you should have my script already. I think I called it just player script. So you can just go ahead and add that component right there, and then you should be able to walk around just fine. We'll fill in these in later. But if you want to start from scratch or just learn how the code works, you can go ahead and add another component, and then you can just do new script, and then you can call it whatever. So you can call it player script, whatever. And we're going to be doing C# for our code today. So I already have a script. I just called it player walking. So I'm going to go ahead and add that, player walking. And then let's pull that up and get started. So this is what your default scripts will always look like. They always have a start and an update. And start is called once at the very beginning, and then update is called every frame. So up to you on how you want to use those two methods. So to begin with, I'm actually going to create a couple of variables. I'm going to create a private character controller. I'm going to create a private vector3 move direction, and then I'm going to make a public float speed. So the character controller variable is just going to basically hold that character controller component we just added so we can access it within the script. So in the start method, because we only need to do this once, we can do controller equals get component character controller, and then put in your parentheses at the end as well. And of course semicolons are the best. And then the move direction is going to be where our player is moving, and a vector3 is just an x, y, and z vector in world space, so don't worry about it too much if you ever were big on physics, but we're going to set that to be equal to vector3.0, so our player doesn't start moving at the beginning. And then we have our speed, which we will actually set later. So we now have our controller to work with. So I'm going to go ahead and do an if statement, and then we can just call the controller variable if controller dot is grounded. So if it's on the ground, then we should be able to walk around. So one way to get input, and I'm going to save this to move direction. Move direction is equal to a new vector3. So a new direction we're going to make based off our input, and we can do input dot get axes, and then in the parentheses we can do horizontal, and then comma, and then our y direction is going to be 0 because we don't want to fly up into space. So I'm going to do 0 there, and then the z is going to be input dot get axes, and this is going to be vertical. And go ahead and close up, make sure all your parentheses are correct, and then I'm going to do move direction is equal to lowercase transform, and then dot transform direction, and then in that I'm going to put a move direction. And don't worry about this too much. This will just convert it from local to world space. So if for some reason our player is rotated in a way, it won't always go left based off of its rotation, and it's just a little small housekeeping thing we have to worry about. And then finally we're going to do move direction times equals speed. And what this does is it'll just update the direction, the force, I guess, of your vector, so you'll go farther in less time. Then below that, I'm going to put in move direction dot y, because this is again a vector 3, so we have the x, y, and z coordinates, I guess. And I'm going to do y minus equals 9.81 f times time dot delta time. Now, for you physics people out there, you'll notice that the 9.81 is gravity. The reason it's an f is because it's a float type, so you just put that f there or else it'll yell at you. And then we're going to do multiply by time dot delta time. The reason why that is because your update is not constant. You're not always going to be at a constant 60 frames per second or whatever. So that just accounts for the variation between your frames. So everything is nice and smooth. Then finally, we're actually going to do controller dot move. And then in that we're just going to put move direction, and then again we're going to do time dot delta time, and this will keep our movement smooth over time as well. So go ahead and save that, and then we'll switch back to Unity here. And now before we start playing, one important thing to notice is that we made our speed variable public. What that means is in our inspector right now you can see speed is currently 0. Well, because it's public, we can modify this any way we want. So I'm going to make this, let's make this 15 at the start. And then now I can hit play. And then now you can see there is our player, and we can move around using arrow keys. We can use WASD because we used the horizontal and vertical axes. And then we can see us moving around. And you can actually edit this while you're playing. Now if I make this 2, you can see the immediate change of, oh, I'm very slow. Just be warned that because you made an edit in play mode, once you get out of play mode, it'll jump right back to 15. So keep track of that if you're making big edits. Now we want to be able to use our mouse. So we're going to actually to control the camera, I guess. So one thing we're going to do is add on to our script, and so we're going to add a couple more variables. So this is going to be again private float, and this is going to be rotation y, and we're going to set that equal to 0, and then we're going to do private float sensitivity, if I can type, sensitivity x to equal to 5, and then we're going to do private float sensitivity y equal to 10, and feel free to worry about or pick your own values for that as well. Coming back into update, we're going to do float rotation x is equal to transform dot Euler angles dot, or actually sorry, dot local Euler angles dot y, and then we're going to do plus input again, except we're going to get axes again, but this time we're going to do mouse space x, and this will get the mouse left and right. And then we're going to multiply that by sensitivity to x, so you can adjust that as you see fit. Then we're going to do rotation y is also going to be the same thing, except we're actually going to do plus equals input dot get axes, except this time we're going to be doing mouse y. And then of course we're going to multiply the sensitivity of that y as well. Because we're looking up and down, we don't want to look too far up and too far down, so what we can do is we can do a clamp of this value. So we can do rotation y, and I want to make sure that it never goes below 60 or above 60. So that'll keep it nice and tight like that. And finally, we're going to do transform dot Euler angles, or dot local Euler angles again, and then we're going to set it to be a new vector 3, and we're going to actually change it to be negative rotation X and then rotation Y. Nope, I switched those two. Negative rotation Y and then rotation X and then 0 for the Z. Now this might not make too much sense because I swapped the X and Y, but that's the way that the rotation of your object will work. So if I go ahead and save that and then play again, you should now be able to see, once it's done compiling, if I go ahead and hit the play button, I can now, you can see that it's now wiggling around right there. And that's good because that's what we want to happen. Except before we go, we should add the camera as a child of the player. So I'm going to go ahead and drag the camera onto the player, and then now I can change the main camera position to be 0, 0, 0. And what that does is it'll put it pretty much inside of the capsule. So now when I hit play, if I look around now, I am now inside of the thing, and as I walk around, I am now walking around from the perspective of the player. So this is basically how to get good character movement, especially with the mouse, done correctly. So if that code didn't make too much sense, that's totally fine. You'll learn as you go on, but tune in next episode, our final episode, on how to actually create the gun, create the enemies, and create the barrels. So see you next time. I'm Ryan. Bye-bye.